So is there ever a good reason for someone to run Nightmare and Andariel? Well, the answer is maybe? So there's a few points and a little bit of information that I want to get to before reaching my final conclusion, giving you my opinion on who, if, when, why anyone should run Nightmare and Andariel. So the first thing I'm going to touch on is, why would anyone even consider running Nightmare and Andariel? Sometimes perhaps people aren't quite strong enough to get in through hell a little bit, so what they will do is go back and farm Mephisto or an Andariel just in Nightmare in order to hopefully get a little bit better gear, so then they can progress into hell difficulty and eventually beat the game. Now there is also another reason why people will run Nightmare and Andariel, and that's for a little ring. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called the Stone of Jordan. Now, crazy enough, a little, I don't know if you call it a fluke in the game or just the way that it's made, it's actually one of the best rings in the game, but you can actually find it incredibly early on. You can actually find it from some of the late act endgame bosses in normal even, but actually Nightmare and Andariel is known as one of the best spots in order to get a Stone of Jordan. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail because I've done videos about it in the past, but essentially Andariel's monster level is 49, and because of this, that means she can only drop 3 different types of unique rings: a Menald, a Nagel, and that's right, the big dog, the Stone of Jordan. So because there's less options for what a unique ring could be, when the game does eventually choose to drop you a unique ring, you have a better chance of it being that ring. Just for an example of the odds of finding one though, even under the greatest of circumstances, it still is not particularly common. Now, I recently did a few of these runs just to sample out and try to get myself an SOJ, and I had a little bit over 400 magic find running it on the highest player's difficulty, and I had roughly 1 in 800 chance of getting a Stone of Jordan. But odds being the way that they are, you could find one on your very first run, you could do thousands of runs and not find a single one. So it is far from guaranteed. Or you could be the happiest man in the world and be walking away with a full hand of SOJs in just a handful of runs. Now, even though you can get a great ring like the Stone of Jordan, there is a ton of things from Nightmare and Andariel that you actually just cannot get because she is not high enough monster level. But of course, you got to be able to get some good things, right? Could you get like a Shaco?
No.
Well, Phil, I don't know. Maybe a Arachnid's Mesh?
Nuh-uh.
Geez, and I don't know. Maybe I get a higher mid-rune from Andariel or some of the minions around her.
Nope.
Geez, I don't know. Then maybe I could get an Oculus for my sorceress. Help that caster out.
No.
All right. Can we get anything good from Nightmare and Andariel with the exception of this Stone of Jordan? The answer is actually yes. You can get some incredibly useful stuff for a ton of casters and really just a ton of characters in the game. So I did 1,000 Nightmare and Andariel runs, and I'm going to show you a ton of the drops here. Not every single one, but I'll show you the good stuff that I found, and then I'll let you know like how many of them I found in these 1,000 runs. Here I got some chance guards, just 3 runs in. Actually, they turn out to be ethereal. I get probably almost a dozen of these throughout the runs, but not all ethereal, of course. Run 57, we get a good, I'll call it a budget option for a melee character. It could go on your mercenaries as well. I find 4 or 5 of these in these runs here, and that is the Steel Skull. Now another good budget option for certain characters here at run 60, that's this unique war hat. It's known as pretty much the poor man's Shaco, and that is the Peasant's Crown. I found almost too many of these to count in these sets of runs. And another item I found almost too many of them to count in these sets of runs are unique gauntlets, which are Frostburns. They are an absolute necessity, a go-to for any of the energy shield sorceresses because they give you a ton of increased maximum mana. So until this point, I haven't even found a single unique ring of any kind yet. I finally find one here, 89 runs in. Probably going to be a Menald or a Nagel, something like that. There's no way that this fast, we're not even an hour into it. I couldn't get an SOJ already. Oh, let's go. Look at that reaction. It was pretty crazy, pretty exciting. But yeah, actually 89 runs in, already got an SOJ. But I'm going to want some more because I want to wear one and I want to sell one to the vendor in order to get an Annie. So we're going to keep hunting. We're going to go all the way to 1,000 runs. So 2 runs later, another unique ring. Is it possible 2 SOJs this fast? Well, Guess what? No, it's not. Someone probably could, but not me. It's a Manald. I find many of these. Now we're hopping to some unique boots here that are great for melee characters. That's this unique light boots. They're the Goblin Toes. 25% chance of crushing blow. Great, like I said, on any melee character. This is another one of those items I find a ton of. Now we pull that last and final unique ring that you are capable of finding here from Andariel. And that is the Nagel ring. You're hoping to get up to the 30% magic find on it. I have yet to find one with 30 on it. This one's got 17. Real rough. And obviously, like the Manald, I find a ton of these as well. Now this is an interesting drop. There's actually 4 things here that are kind of worth noting, which is super interesting. You see there we got a set amulet. Unfortunately, it's not Talrash's amulet. It could have been, but it's not. Here we are. We have a gold wrap, but you also see a shark skin belt and this Tulward sword laying around. So that's an Alibaba and also a razor tail. Pretty crazy. I find several of each one of these throughout the runs. Now at run 154. The first time I find these unique demon hide boots, they're kind of a good option in certain places, like maybe a gold fine barb and stuff like that. So these are Inferno Strides. I find about 8 of these throughout the run. This particular drop I'm noting just because it is actually the highest rune here that you can get from Andariel, and that is this Ko rune. I find 2 Ko runes straight from Andariel. From the other monsters, the highest I found was maybe like a Hell rune. Another okay option here you can get from Nightmare Andariel is actually this Salet, which is what, French for helmet or something like that, but this is a rock stopper. Crazy enough, Ethereal is actually a good item there to throw on a mercenary, damage reduction, bunch of resistances, hit recovery, all good stuff. You can get a few different of the Immortal Kings set pieces. Here I get the Avenger Guard, which is going to be the helmet for that set, obviously. Even though kind of unlikely, you could actually get some good rare items. And here I actually get some boots, which have some crazy resistances on them, considering I find them in normal. They have the maximum of 40 to both fire and poison, and have cold res on it, and faster walk around. So a neat pair of rare boots to find, especially just in Nightmare. Now I'm surprised it took me almost 300 runs to find this item as well, because it is a pretty low level item, but very good for casters. That is these Mage Fists. Unfortunately, that amulet is not Tal's amulet as well, but these are great for casters here. Every once in a while, you can get a crazy kind of drop like this. You get 4 uniques and actually a set amulet that could have been Tal's. It ends up not being once again. But I like picking up an idea and a bunch of unique stuff like this, kind of testing my knowledge to see if I can remember the names of everything. So you can also get good items for things like that Necromancer as well. So here you see that unique Grim Wand along with a couple of other uniques, but this is the most noteworthy here, Lament. Like I said, great early on for those Necromancers. Now I've mentioned it a few times before, there's a particular set amulet that you want to get. It is probably the second most valuable thing here you can get from Andariel, and that is Talrash's Adjudication. Early on in ladder, you would love to get one of these. It is actually the only one of them I find in all 1000 runs. I got asked a few times about this one. That is the unique cedar bow there. That's the Kuko Shukaku. Pretty cool name. It's kind of a good item to upgrade and then throw on an Act 1 mercenary. I found about 4 of them, maybe 5 here in the 1000. Right here at 752, I only found 1 of these, and I almost don't remember ever finding this item ever before. I mean, I'm sure I have, but it doesn't even look familiar. The name doesn't look familiar. This is the Torch of Ebro. Literally, I don't ever remember finding this before. There is actually another good set amulet here from Andariel you can get. Not as good as the Talrash's amulet, but this is good for any character though. It's got 1 to all skills. That's the Telling of Beads. Now we'll jump. We're at run 842. I'm just going to note here, I did get a Viper Magi. I found 2 or 3 of these in the sets of runs here. This one, not rolling particularly great, not terrible. 29 all res. And then I'll wrap it up. This will be the last drop that I show for this particular section, but it is a string of ears. Kind of funny, it came with a magic Demon Hide Sash and the unique Demon Hide Sash, but it rolls absolutely terrible. I find probably 10 of these from Nightmare Andariel. Now, for Sweet Phil's final thoughts. Is there ever a good reason to run Nightmare Andariel? Yes, there is, but only in extremely limited circumstances. Should you ever run it online on Battle.net? I would say probably not. Pretty much with incredibly basic gear, with almost naked characters, you can actually run Hell Andariel almost just as easy. On top of that, with any caster, you could even run Hell Mephisto with essentially any character just doing that moat trick. And also, if we really wanted to go back, you could obviously moat trick Nightmare Mephisto as well, and then you can have a chance to get even better items. Also, without being able to change the player difficulty, the odds of a Stone of Jordan even dropping online in a solo game are so incredibly low, I don't believe it's worth giving up the opportunity to farm anywhere in Hell, even the easiest areas where you could even get a high rune or something like that, or good items like that Arachnid's Mesh or that Shaco. So I'm positive about now you're wondering, what is this incredibly limited circumstance that you're speaking of, Phil? Well, the only time, in my opinion, that I would ever run Nightmare Andariel is if you're playing single player, you really need that SOJ for your character, and on single player also, you have to get a Stone of Jordan, you have to sell it to a vendor in order to get the Annie Charm. It is literally the only way to get one on single player, so if that Stone of Jordan just isn't going to drop for you any other way, you might have to go ahead and grind Nightmare Andariel in order to get it. You're giving up a lot of time, you're giving up a lot of opportunity to drop other great items, but the Annie Charm, in my opinion, for a single player account that you can, with the shared stash, pass around to all your characters, in my opinion, the time and the sacrifice is well worth it. Now, it might not shock you, but I played quite a bit of Diablo 2 in my years, and in my entire life, I've only ever found 3 now Stones of Jordan. One of them was back in like 2006. It was like the height of duping of Stones of Jordans, so it was essentially worthless. That was kind of disappointing. Pulled that one from a cow game. A couple of years back, playing single player, I ran Nightmare Andariel almost 1,500 runs before I got 1 Stone of Jordan. And then here, for this particular little project I did, and then I'm subsequently making this video about, I did 1,000 Nightmare Andariel runs on the Players 7, Players 8 difficulty, and I only got 1 Stone of Jordan. Crazy enough, it was in the first 100 runs, but the next 930-ish runs didn't get another one at all. So that's it, folks. If you aren't running single player, I would recommend do not farm Nightmare Andariel. The sacrifice of giving up the opportunity to find all them other good items is just too great.